you could hear it on repeat almost to the end of your life and never get sick of it. It's too positive, full of energy, upbeat, like motivating, really cool in that sort of classic 90s way. And I can't help but just feel like way better, no matter how like depressed I feel. Mega Man 2 comes out, like, oh shoot, like
I gotta go do something.
It's time to go. Like, let's get something done. Right. This is going to be one of the most difficult episodes of this podcast I have ever had to prepare for. We've done a lot of lists lately. Yeah. My top 10 games of all time, best intros.
Yeah.
Intro sequences for video games. What else?
Top 10 FF games.
Yeah, we did that one
all
too.
of them. We basically just ranked them all.
So, you have to make hard choices on lists like this. What do you leave off? What do you include? Today we're doing the top 10 OSTs, video game OSTs of all time.
Yeah, this was surprisingly very difficult.
It was almost physically painful for me to like be like, dude, I cannot not speak on this, then I'm leaving off the list.
I know.
So I'm cheating a little bit. I'm going to be upfront with you. If Kaysen had a list that included something I had, I'm letting him pick it so that I can put something else in the this lengthy list of others that I couldn't fit into my 10. I'm putting them in.
But still talk about it.
But I'll still get a chance to talk about it when you talk about yours.
That'll be fun.
So the other caveat to this is a sans Final Fantasy list.
Yes. Once again,
we don't want Final Fantasy to dominate the whole thing.
Yes.
Which it would. So we're going to do, again, some future episode where we rank the Final Fantasy original soundtracks.
That will once again rip my heart out. But
that'll be really hard too.
Yeah.
But
we got to do it. We have to do
pain
it.
for another day. I can.
Yeah, that's a problem for future us. Yeah. Sure glad we're not that guy.
Well, why don't we start with some honorable mentions, games you wanted to put on there that you couldn't just seem to find a spot for. What is from yours?
For me, I can't put Silent Hill 2 in the top 10. I can't. It doesn't logically work. The numbers don't add up. It just
I would like to know
can't be there.
What was your thought process behind how you decided what goes on this? Was it just maybe just a what do I feel, gut feeling?
Yes, that's exactly
okay.
It. That's basically all I did. I'm not using some objective criteria to create this list. I'm just saying I don't get the warm fuzzies when I listen to Silent Hill 2. And that's why it doesn't add up. The math, the numbers aren't there. It doesn't have the numbers. It doesn't have I can't. I'm basically using that essentially, but at the same time.
So it's feels over reels.
It's absolutely
your list is feels over reels.
If we're talking about music, we are talking about feels over reels. I mean, like that is
that
music.
That method of, I guess, making choices.
Well, the feels are the reels when it's music.
Must apply more to this than to anything else.
I think so. I think so.
Music is about the emotions you feel.
And I have a number one choice that a lot of people will question, but I have a reason for that, and it is certainly personal life experiences. So
that's the best. Personal stories is exactly what we want to share for this type of thing.
However, it feels so great to listen to this song. It precludes things like Silent Hill 2. So there's issues with and I know that. I can feel it. And I'm like, I love that soundtrack. But based on my current criteria, I just can't put it in. But I got to talk about it, so it's an honorable mention because it is that good. It should be in most people's top 10 lists.
It's surprisingly
it's not in mine, which is sad.
So the way I kind of went about this was there were a few things that I actually wrote them down, like things I wanted to consider. I don't know how well I ended up following this. It was just things that this is what I want to be thinking about while I choose.
Right.
So I wanted to sort of gauge musical complexity, include something in there that shows a mastery of musical complexity versus just a lot of catchy, hummable melodies.
Okay.
Like this is why one of my honorable mentions is Rhythm Heaven.
Oh, cool.
The one for the Wii.
Oh, yeah.
Because
those games are fun, dude.
I really do value, to a huge extent, like witty, fun, clever, and music that is catchy in that way and that was just so hilarious in context
very fun.
with the mini games to Rhythm Heaven. I in particular, I really love the one where you have like the wrestler and he's being like interviewed by the girl.
Pose for the fans.
Pose for the fans. And he like to hit the poses at the right time while she's like, is that true?
Oh, that's so funny.
It's like gibberish.
Pika, pika, pika,
is that true? Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like back and forth.
Pose for the fans.
It's just really fun, but there's no complexity to the music. It is all built around heavy rhythm and being able to follow and time things perfectly. But
you can't be overly complex with a game like that.
That to me, I don't want to use musical complexity as some sort of like elitist gatekeeping metric here to be like, oh, you have to be like a musical master composer, right? In order to make my list. That's not
minimum
what I'm doing.
30 instruments.
Yeah. I feel like Rhythm Heaven's music, for all of the reasons I just said, is just as good as something that's like very deep and complex.
Sure.
But I didn't want to essentially only pick stuff that was like hummable and like had strong melody. I wanted to make room for maybe more atmospheric music or some that's more ambient. Silent Hill is very much that way.
Oh, yes, it is.
As is Deadly Premonition, which this is another honorable mention of mine. Deadly Premonition as a game is so wacky and weird and Twin Peaksy.
Yeah.
And just like crazy and fun as far as its style goes. But the music kind of mirrors that. So you'll have like this jazzy kind of like, background, and then you'll just have this screaming brass come in very randomly and just
Okay.
And it's just all over the place. In fact,
it's like freeform jazz.
Maybe I'll just like really quickly play an example of this. Okay, so here's Deadly Premonition. You'll hear it. It's just kind of weird. It's this weird style to it, man,
Yeah.
I really like it, though.
Sounds like an alto saxophone.
But it's got that very jazzy feel all throughout. It's just good.
There is this, it's like freeform jazz style.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of Deadly Premonition, and cool. Silent Hill's not exactly like that, but it's got more of that just wide soundscape, kind of ambient synth. But it's also got that, what is it? I think it's the theme of Laura or something like that. It's got that like acoustic guitar.
That's right, yeah.
So those are both really, really good. I would count them both as honorable mentions as well.
Well, the thing that's so great about Silent Hill 2's soundtrack is how perfectly it blends with the game itself. Oh, sure. Right? That's partly why it just pains me to not have it on the list.
Yeah. Was that the only?
No, I have a couple others. So the other one is Earthbound. Earthbound has such a good soundtrack, and it's very chiptune-y. It feels fun. It's great. But there's this musical motif of like the alien invasion that
yes, that kind of oscillating,
that's kind of in every song,
alien motif.
Yeah, and if it weren't for that right there, it might have a spot on the top 10. But I'm not a huge fan of that, and that was a big part of their instrument set. But the tunes themselves are just so good. They're very good. And it's got a long soundtrack too, like tons and tons of songs.
Yeah, it does. That was another kind of criteria. I don't know if it's criteria is the right word, but one thing I wanted to think about was having one, like a full body of excellence, like the whole soundtrack from beginning to end. You can sit and listen. It's basically all really good, rather than just like, oh, there's like 5 or 6 like really good ones, and then a lot of kind of filler or just not so good stuff.
It depends on how good those 5 or 6 really good ones are.
I know. But then also like a range of musical styles, right? It doesn't all feel the same, like from one track to the next.
Like Earthbound. Yeah.
Like Earthbound does. Yeah.
Well, but it's good. And then my last one here is Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. The soundtrack is incredible. It's so much fun. I love Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. But I don't know. Maybe it is a little too simple, although I love its simplicity because it deals with there's a lot of like lullaby, baby, child, themes to it, like the music box at the end. That's just absolutely beautiful music. But I couldn't fit in the top 10, but I have to bring it up. So my last honorable mention, probably what would have been number 11, is Mario 2 Yoshi's Island for the SNES. So that's it. That concludes my honorable mention list.
Okay, honorable mentions for me, because I'm almost like live deciding like what actually still finally gets slid into the 10, because I've still got like 5 or 6 more.
Once you say it, it's solidified forever.
Once I say it, like it's not going in.
You can't go back.
Hard. So I'm going to start with Street Fighter 2.
Oh yeah, Yoko Shimomura did that actually. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, one
I
of
was
my
really
favorite
surprised
composers.
to learn that Yoko Shimomura was the composer for Street Fighter 2.
That was the start of
It has, of course, incredibly iconic melodies.
Oh yeah.
Whether it's Ryu's theme or like Guile's theme is really popular. Dun 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 dun. Right. But it's also got a pretty wide range of musical genres too, because you go all over the world. Street Fighter 2, at least the console version, was called World Warrior, I think.
Oh, okay.
And so you're going from like
Russia
to China to Japan to United States to Brazil to India. You're kind of going all over the world. So I really liked that aspect of it. But yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like something's got to get left off it. So that's an honorable mention for me. I'll also put Hyper Light Drifter on there as an honorable mention.
I did like the music soundtrack to that.
I love the Blade Runner synth vibe to it.
Yeah, the synth. Yeah,
it's really unique. That was another thing I put that down here as one of my criteria too. So a cohesion with the theme of the story, right? So like if you're listening to any song on the soundtrack, you immediately know what it is. So you got this unique style developed specifically for this game. You couldn't like plug it in anywhere else necessarily.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And it immediately, you know what that game is about just from the music. Now here's where I think Silent Hill is really cool.
Oh yes,
so
exactly.
My buddy Bryce, who is sitting off camera right now, he came to visit me this week, and I was kind of putting this list together while he was sitting with me, and I was playing some Silent Hill music, and this was crazy. He was like, "This reminds me of like a mirror or like some kind of like mirror shattering or something like that,"
Nice.
And I was like, yeah, the entire game is a character looking himself in the mirror.
That is essentially.
And like being honest with himself.
Yeah.
And the music alone,
which
for a
is hard.
game he had never played before, evoked that image. Yeah. That's also the kind of thing I kind of wanted to think about. So
it's very valuable. It's hard to do.
Silent Hill 2 is really, really, really good. Okay, what else should I... Doom 2016.
Okay, yeah, I haven't played the new one.
So this one, maybe I'm only leaving off because it's pretty much all like extremely heavy, and that's not a knock on it. Like, right? Like it needs to be
right
for the type of game it
that's
is.
The type
it's
of game.
One note. This is what you're here to do. It knows exactly why you're playing, and it's going to hit you with as much of that at level 11 as possible.
Oh, that's funny.
But I can't stress enough like how dope this soundtrack is without showing this to you because it's really funny. So there's this meme I saw. So you got this bird, right? But the whole soundtrack, it basically feels this way. So, it basically all feels like that. Yeah. But that is done so well, and there's like just such like a just awesome drive and just like a violence and aggression in that just fits so well with the game.
That's cool, man. That's fun.
So that's definitely an honorable mention for me is Doom 2016. I think that's good. That's a good way to round off honorable mentions. So let's get into the actual list. What is number 10?
Number 10 for me is the soundtrack from Journey.
Oh, Journey's so good.
It's so good. It's so good. Now, the game itself is short, thus the soundtrack isn't overly long, but it's very thoughtful, and it's the kind of soundtrack that complements the gameplay so well, especially towards the end of the game, as there's this build-up towards this beautiful kind of moment. Like every song, it kind of leads you on this journey that builds up to this moment, and that final track is called Apotheosis.
Yes, best song in the game.
It is by far the best song in the game, but it's playing on motifs from previous from the very beginning of the game.
Yep.
And the way that the song essentially has its climax is softer than you would expect from something like this. Maybe more of it's a lot more minimalistic with that cello.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like you kind of see the beauty of simplicity. Like I love big concert music with 100 pieces to the orchestra, know, but there's something really, really special about that particular track, and especially the end of it, as you're kind of moving back towards the beginning or something like that. And that's more or less kind of the cyclical journey of that game, which is from the simple to the complex and then back to the simple. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And then there's the credits song too, which is the I Was Born for This, which of course led me to this whole place where actually my kids have memorized the entire saying there from Joan of Arc in French.
Yes.
And we repeat it like every night.
That's awesome.
Je ne pas peur. So it's very good. It's taken me on this whole anything with language wise, like you've got me, like I'm hooked. I'm going to learn whatever weird language. That's why another game on this list we're going to talk about a little bit. It intrigues me to no end. But the soundtrack is so cohesive. It feels so unified and it feels so complete.
Yep.
Yet at the same time, you can kind of loop from the end of it back to the beginning almost seamlessly. It's very, very beautiful.
On Journey, we did a podcast analysis on that game, and I remember that being one of the points that we brought up from our research about when they were getting to the end of the game, they weren't sure how to finish it.
Yeah, it was difficult.
And they kept trying to go bigger
and
more bombastic.
Oh, let's add more brass.
And more epic.
Yeah.
And the way, I can't remember exactly how the director put it, but he was like, he basically was trying to, how he described what he was doing to his audience was grabbing them and like shoving down their throat, like, feel something, mother effer. Like, you have to feel this, right?
Yes.
Like trying to force it a little too much. And they would just try to go heavier and more swelling and more powerful. And what ended up working instead was going quieter and dropping it off and being subtle. And just like you described in Apotheosis, the climax of that, instead of going big, it goes soft as you walk into the light at the end of the game. And it's just perfection.
It's perfection.
Total perfection for what that game's theme is.
And especially with the idea, you think about what it would mean to enter into like this profound, enlightening mystery at the peak of a mountain, at the everything is kind of gathering itself up to this like cohesive unity, right? And you're not going to still have this variety of tons of instruments and this diverse and this big sound of dynamics and all that. No, you're gonna slowly discover that unity within the music as well. Everything will kind of condense into the most meaningful, this one instrument. Everything kind of gives itself up so that this one thing can shine. And everyone's paying attention to just that, right? It's so perfect with the theme of the game. Like, I can't even really describe it adequately, but it's incredibly meaningful. And imagine Journey without the soundtrack.
Yeah, right.
And you could say that with all the games on this list.
I know.
But the soundtrack is such a big part of what made that game so meaningful. I think maybe to a higher degree than most games.
Yeah.
Maybe than any other game.
I feel I agree with that so much. So often what carries games for me are the music. Like, the music does so much heavy lifting in terms of when
especially
I end up loving
a
game. Like, the music is like got to be more than 50% of the reason why a game becomes an all-time classic to me. Like, it's really important. And it does so much in communicating the power of the story.
Right.
I think it was classically Tetsuya Takahashi, when making Xenogears, who said, I just was so depressed and just panicking because I felt like the story wasn't working.
Right.
And then Yasunori Mitsura's music went in, and all of a sudden it felt right.
Right.
And I felt so much better. And I feel like way more often than we realize, music is really carrying, good music is really carrying the emotional impact of some of our favorite like game stories and things like that. And so when I was picking these, I was like, I hope I don't end up just picking my top 10 games from the top 10 games list and just listing their soundtracks.
Right.
And I didn't.
Me neither.
Because there's so many ones on here where like the music is almost the whole reason why I like the game that I'm picking for this list.
Yeah.
The music carries it so far. But yeah,
especially for older games where it was difficult to show that emotion.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was left up to the imagination. Having a good soundtrack helped to convey what the pixel art, what the little pixels were incapable of doing at that time. And maybe that's why a lot of the 90s games had such meaningful soundtracks.
Yeah. So number 10 for me, the one I'm picking is Mega Man 2. All Mega Man music, and especially when you get into the Mega Man X series and stuff like that, like all of it's really, really awesome. It has tons of energy. It's the kind of soundtrack from that sort of like era, that NES, Super NES era, where like you've got to have energy that's like carrying players through some pretty, tough gameplay. Like you're going to be dying a lot. You're going to be hearing this over and over and over again.
You need something that motivates people to keep trying.
Yes, to keep going, keep at it.
Almost like workout music, right?
Exactly.
Like at a gym. Yeah.
That's a great analogy. It's the kind of game that it's challenging, and especially the NES ones. It's challenging, and you're going to be going through the levels over and over, so you're going to have a lot of loops. Right. And that music has got to be the kind of music you can hear over and over again and stay pumped.
Yeah.
But in particular, with Mega Man 2, I feel like, and maybe it's because also there have been some extremely good Mega Man 2 like metal covers on the internet.
Of course.
That like take that music and almost enhance it to what like it was supposed to be or what we imagined it to be like back in the day. There's one from Game Metal, the channel Game Metal in particular. Yeah. He did a Mega Man 2, or he did a Mega Man medley, but it has 2 Mega Man 2 spots at the beginning of it.
Yeah.
And both of those are just freaking amazing. So it's like the title sequence, and then like when the title comes on and you see Mega Man come up, and it's like, you know, it 20XX, and it's like panning up the building, the skyscraper, and then Mega Man standing up there.
I remember Yes. I love this song,
Mega Man 2 is full of that kind of music where you could hear it on repeat almost to the end of your life and never get sick of it. It's too positive, full of energy, upbeat, like motivating, really cool in that sort of classic 90s way. And I can't help but just feel like way better, no matter how like depressed I feel. Mega Man 2 comes out, like, oh shoot, like
I gotta go do something.
It's time to go. Like, let's get something done, right?
That's fun.
So Mega Man 2, even though it's like I'm not a big Mega Man fan as far as the games are concerned, because I've gotten better at this as I've gotten older. Dark Souls cured me of this, but like games would get really hard, say when I was like 7 or 8 years old, and I'd give up on them, and I'd go outside and play basketball or something. When Dark Souls came out, I got more into like, okay, I'm going to stick with it even though it's hard, and I'm going to like finish this. So maybe I should go back to Mega Man and get better at the games and like maybe appreciate them more.
Is that the solution to everything though? Is just get good?
Just get good. That's exactly what Dark Souls, like that's the whole meme of the Dark Souls monitors, get good.
Just get good.
So I learned how to get good later in life. I wish I had gotten good when I was playing Mega Man as a kid, but I always loved the music. So even my buddies would be playing it. The music was just the coolest music. So Mega Man 2 in particular is my number 10.
Nice. I wish I remembered more of that music, but I loved those games as a kid, but I don't think we ever had one.
The Dr. Wily music is another like favorite of mine.
Nice.
Oh
yeah.
Yep.
I love that one.
Yep.
All right. Number 9 for me is Halo.
Halo is so good.
Theme. It's unbelievable that music, that it's movie soundtrack level. Like it is, there's so much thought put into it. I mean, and honestly, just that first track, just that opening track with the choir, kind of almost like a Gregorian chant, like in an old church or something. It's just like like the reverb acoustics of the room, or I'll bet you it was a room. It wasn't just a digital effect. It just sounds so beautiful. I love it. And then, you know, the music comes in. Oh, it's just it's so good. And then it gets really rhythmic. Yeah. They treated Halo very well. They treated it very cinematically, and I think that's part of the reason that it sold so well. In its marketing and advertising, they did a lot of really like high production cinematics in order to market it. They kept that going. I mean, as far as I know, that's how it continued.
Yeah.
I remember the Halo ODST commercial trailers like on TV. I was like, holy crap, this is a freaking movie, man. This is so good. Yeah. But the original Halo, this soundtrack is the most sold or the best selling soundtrack of all time.
Is it really?
For video games. Not for video games.
That's crazy.
The Halo soundtrack has just sold like crazy. And it's that good. It is that good. It deserves a spot in the top 10. That composer he's incredible. He's so good.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it.
I think the thing that I like the most about Halo is I'm not even a first-person shooter guy. It's like not my genre, right? So when I would play that with friends, I always sucked at it, and like I was always dying all the time. And
I wasn't that good at the right stick. Like,
I wasn't good at it.
Hard for me.
That was the first game I played where you were using the right stick to like move, to like change to aim. Yeah. So it was really hard to get used to at first, right? Like I'd retrain your brain a little bit.
Right.
But what pulled me into Halo was the Halo ring itself. I thought was such a cool idea.
So brilliant. So cool.
Like a whole world on the inside of this ring.
Yeah.
Right?
And it almost kind of disappears in the sky.
Yes, you could see it disappear above the horizon or whatever. But the music paired up with that image on the title screen of the Halo ring.
Yep.
It brought so much mystery to like what that object or world is and what its purpose is. And I just got so curious about like, what is this about? This is so cool. And one of my favorite things to this day still is to like look up those videos where like a bunch of guys go into the bathroom and one guy just starts like chanting and they all come together and they're in it's reverberating in the bathroom, like the public bathroom, right?
The acoustics.
Yes,
that's what I'm talking about.
Of
you need a place with like high reverb. I'm not saying bathrooms have great acoustics, but for something like that, you get that intense reverb, right?
Yeah.
And you're right, it adds to the mystery. And it's so crazy because it's like, futuristic shooting aliens, but it's called Halo. Okay, but it's the ring, I get it. But Halo gives people, the Western mind has a certain image associated with the halo, right?
Yes.
Over the head of an angel or a saint, right?
Yeah.
And then the music sounds like an old Gregorian chant from like
angelic
Rome
in nature
in 1100 AD, you know?
Exactly.
And it's like, but we're in the future and we're killing aliens. What? Like it presents this mystery here. And it's not like, it's not a dissonance. It's there. There's a resonance there that needs to be discovered. I need to explore the meaning of this and how it all connects. Yeah. And even that song itself in the intro that kind of goes into the more cinematic kind of musical score with the full symphony and all that. But it's leading you on a journey as well. Once again, it's just like here's this, then there's the music, and then we end on the chanting again at the end of that track.
Yeah, it's got like a very heroic feel. But a very unique sort of musical style to it that is just irresistibly mysterious right on the title screen. And that video I was talking about, John was talking about here, like, so you have just this one guy in the bathroom who starts like, or whatever. And then like all the guys in the bathroom like come out of the stalls and they just like join in. So there's a couple of reasons why that's so funny to me.
Yeah.
One, it was a cultural phenomenon that just grabbed onto everybody who was our age, high school at that time. Their LAN parties every weekend.
Halo LAN party.
Everybody's going
weekend,
every weekend to a Halo LAN party. So like,
even if you suck at Halo, it was
no
still
matter
fun.
where you were in a public bathroom out in the middle of nowhere, you start singing that. Every other dude is going to know it, and they're going to join you. There was like this, it brought people together in that sense. And that's why that video like works so good, so well as a meme to me. But anyway,
very good. What's your number 9?
Terranigma.
Terranigma, very cool.
We are going to be covering this game shortly after we finish with Halo, or not Halo, and Metal Gear Solid 2, which is what we're playing right now. And I've described a little bit in the other video we did. This was my number 2 on my list of top 10 games of all time.
That's right.
About why this game is so meaningful to me. But again, so much of that, what I felt when playing it and like being brought to tears at the end. There's another game on your list coming up that also does this that I'll discuss maybe a little bit more. But when you get to the end credits of the game, what I like the end credits to do is do like leitmotifs where they work in almost a medley of like all the great sort of like themes, musical themes of the game.
And then have a parade of all the characters
you
walking across the screen.
Of revisit the experience as you reminisce on the credit screen.
I like that, yeah.
That's what I like to do. You get to an end of a game, let's reflect on the experience. Let's remember the adventure.
And
let's remember
learn?
Everything that happened and like put together our thoughts and put a punctuation on what did we feel about this experience. Right. And a lot of RPGs from this era did that. And Terranigma does it so well. So it's like the imagery you're seeing, the not only revisiting of certain musical motifs, but like expanding on them, almost like taking them to their full bloom.
Yes,
like
yes.
A
I know what you're talking about.
Full soundscape, like we're fully explored this theme in every way that we can musically too.
Very good.
And so it just kind of takes you back through it. You're reflecting on everything. So it has one of those awesome like ends. I think you were talking about this with another game that's on your list that you probably haven't said yet. Or did you? Did you mention Yoshi's Island already?
That was an honorable mention.
Honorable mention. That game does that.
Yeah. Yep.
So anyway, Terranigma is so great because it has this really wide swing and yet a really fine balance between its like very strong, serene, beautiful moments of just awe and wonder and just gives you the appreciation for your life. And then this really silly, like almost in like comical in that classical like Mario RPG kind of way.
Yeah.
Right. Just like physical humor and wackiness. And it just like seamlessly blends these two sort of things together in like harmony.
Fun. That's so much fun.
And so I
love those scenes at the end of the game when you see the bad guy like stamping his foot or something.
Yeah.
It's just fun.
Yeah. Terranigma is this year we're getting a message from David here that this is the 30th anniversary. This year's the 30th anniversary of Terranigma.
Very good.
1995. So
95. Oh my gosh.
So
that means it's the 30th anniversary of a lot of things. 95, man.
But yeah, Terranigma is extremely moving, and it has this great balance between those serene, beautiful, emotionally impactful moments, and then these silly, wacky, clever, comedic kind of moments. And it has just this, it hits all the emotions, and then it just blends into this perfect crescendo of this like final piece during the credits.
That
just like will have you in tears. It's amazing.
I look forward to playing that game.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
I'm excited too. I'm really excited.
My number 8 is it's Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah.
And
the first one or the
yeah, the first one. Okay. I mean, I didn't actually specify. When I say Kingdom Hearts, I'm kind of talking about all of them. But I suppose this would be for the first one, because that's the magic of that soundtrack is just, I don't know. It's kind of hard to describe. I remember after I first played it, even the parts of the game that I thought were like not the most fun, like the gummy ship missions and stuff. I would think of that music, weeks and months later, and I'd still be thinking about it. And it's fun music. It's a fun game. But the main theme of Kingdom Hearts, which of course was written by Yoko Shimomura, who's probably my favorite game music composer.
She's incredible.
Incredible. Yeah. Unbelievably good. And well recognized too.
You know what's funny is like a lot of these composers, particularly like the Japanese RPG composers that we've talked a lot about on our channel, whether it's Nobuo Uematsu.
Yeah,
a lot of them are not like classically trained musicians or composers.
Right.
Yoko Shimomura has like serious classical training.
Nice.
Like her the range of what she can do is pretty unbelievable.
Yeah.
And that's not to take anything away from Nobuo Uematsu, who's like self-taught.
Right.
And obviously he's still
really good.
Unbelievably talented.
Like
and that's so impressive that he could achieve what he has musically, being self-taught for the most part, and just like loving Elton John so much.
Yes, of course.
He just decided to write music. and of course, like his side projects with the Black Mages and his rock band and things like that. But Shimomura has like a depth. And there's actually another composer on here I'm going to talk about, another female Japanese composer who similarly is classically trained like this and is just, they hit notes emotionally that like nobody else, I feel like, can quite hit this in the same way. And I feel like Kingdom Hearts does that.
Kingdom Hearts does it beautifully, and it's simple music.
Yes.
And that's so cool, because when you think of classical music, you're thinking, oh, she can write big, long, huge symphonies with tons of different parts and write for every instrument. It's like, yeah, I suppose she can do that, yes. But also, she can just take a piano and with one finger play a song that will just move you and that could possibly even change your life. So Kingdom Hearts, it's a game I experienced later in life, too. It's something that my wife had played growing up, but I hadn't really. And so she's like, I got to show it to you. And I don't know, like the music for that game, I just love it.
All right. Number 8 for me, I have Fire Emblem Awakening.
Oh, nice. Fire Emblem.
So this is another one of those games that I can really say carries the game hard for me. Because I remember how I felt about this game upon playing it. I finished it, and I started the game over and beat it. I didn't even, like, there wasn't a single day break. It was like the night I finished it, because I think we were all living in the same apartment. And I was playing it late at night while you guys were sleeping. I beat the game. I immediately started a new file and played it again at 3 a.m. or something.
That's pretty cool.
I beat the game a second time and immediately started a third playthrough. I think it's the only game in my entire life I've done that for, where I played it 3 straight times back to back. I guess Ocarina of Time, but that's because it's the only game I had
back in the day,
on the N64. So I just played it over and over again. In revisiting it, so I immediately put it into like my top 5 favorite games of all time. It's like, this is really, really good. And then I learned people online did not agree. Fire Emblem Awakening was seen by many like classic Fire Emblem fans as like the death of the series, and like it went in this other direction people hate now.
Right.
And I was like, but I like it. I like it so much. It's like one of my favorite games. And so, you know, a few years later, I go back to sort of revisit it, and I'm playing it, and I'm like, you know, I think I get where those people were coming from. I don't think I would put this in my top 10 list of favorite games, or maybe even a top 20. I can kind of see some of the problems people have with maybe some of its like strategic gameplay and like lack of variety in like objectives and like win states and characters and things like this. I'm starting to see a little bit more of what people were complaining about. But that music is just still, I mean, it's the best in the series, and it's not close to me. It's not close. And I've played basically every Fire Emblem game except the very most recent one that came out on Switch, which was called, I don't even remember.
I can't remember.
The guy had the weird, like, blue, half like yellow hair or something. No, I think that was the mobile one. But then they had Engage, which I did not play. But I've basically played every other Fire Emblem game in the series except for that. And I think Fire Emblem music is usually pretty solid. But Awakening is in another class.
Wow.
It's
was that Game Boy Advanced or
no? It was Nintendo 3DS.
3DS. Oh, that was it.
And I think what impresses me the most about it is how many ways they are able to use a single leitmotif in so many different contexts. So they'll have like a version of the music, and then they'll have what I think they call the heightened, or like the, can't remember the term for it, but then it's like the battle version of that same piece. So you have like maybe a soft version of it, and then you have like the battle version of it, and it can kind of seamlessly transition between one and the other. So you have like a map screen that can quickly become like this battle music and then back.
Oh, that's cool.
And they reuse themes in many different ways all throughout. And I just think it's like technical mastery from a composing standpoint. Yeah. To be able to just like take one theme and use it in like 4 or 5 different contexts and have it to feel completely different and work and give you different emotions. And every single melody is just extremely catchy. Like you just have it in your head for days, just humming it to yourself. So that's cool. And every single track is amazing. Every single one is a hit. Like you never skip a song. on that OST. It's like, oh, this one's awesome. Oh, this one's awesome. Oh my gosh, this one's awesome.
That's really something.
Yeah.
That's really something.
Yeah.
Because even in my favoriteest games ever,
there's always one.
it's like, we'll just skip that one.
Yeah. And I never skip a track on the Fire Emblem
That's
and
saying
Awakening soundtrack. So that's number 8 for me.
All right, so for number 7, I have the soundtrack from Undertale. And
This one's good.
Undertale and Kingdom Hearts were in serious competition for who's going to get that 7th
Who's going to go ahead?
And if you ask me on a different day, I might switch them up. Who knows?
Yeah.
But really what does it for me is the way that the ending song really gives a good high five to the ending theme of Undertale. And just the themes of it's similar to Kingdom Hearts. Like if I was to pick a game that looks totally different but executes similarly on the same types of themes, it would be Undertale and Kingdom Hearts. Right? Just like friendship and love and understanding and I don't know. There's some depth to Undertale, especially that you wouldn't expect from based on how the game looks initially, right? It's like NES style graphics. And then you find out there's some serious depth here. And the music gets really, really good. And by the end of the game, it's a silly game. It's a really funny game.
Yes,
and
it's
the
hilarious.
music couples that too. And like
Yes.
the shop music and just there's some funny stuff happening in that game. But the theme is profound and it's very deep.
Yeah.
And it's something that I appreciate like crazy. But that song at the end, I thought I would kind of start getting sick of it because I heard it a lot, especially towards the end of the game. It plays for a while as you're kind of approaching, the end of the game. And you don't really. It keeps going, and you could just keep listening to it for longer if you needed to. It wasn't a problem. It's very repetitive, but it's also very good, and especially when it's coupled with the theme of that game, it just works, and it's very moving. It's a very moving score, especially for the like chiptune kind of style that it's going.
Yeah, Undertale, similarly to what I was saying about Terranigma, I always appreciate games that can just freely move between being extremely silly and witty and zany and clever and very physically comedic almost, right? Into being like very sincere and earnest. And within seconds they can just transition from one to the other.
That's hard to do.
It's extremely hard to pull off.
Yeah.
And every element of that game, but then the glue that holds all of those pieces together, I would say, is the soundtrack.
I think so too.
And it's all kind of done. I mean, I don't think Toby Fox is like the only guy who worked on Undertale. Obviously, he brought some other people on to help. I think maybe even particularly with the art and things like that. But I know that he was the one doing the soundtrack, if I'm not mistaken. And again, it confirms to me, if you had a different set of music, or if the music wasn't quite up to this level, like would the game hold up? Now, I think Undertale is wonderful. I think it's wonderful, and I think it would. So my answer to that is yes, it would still hold up as a good game. Yeah. But it's certainly, again, there's so much cohesion that happens with music.
Right.
Music does so much heavy lifting, so much more so than I think a lot of us realize or think about. It
can take you up to just like another
step,
can a whole nother level. Yeah.
You can go ascended Super Saiyan, and ascended when your musical soundtrack is on that level, and that's what I think happens with Undertale. It makes it all work. It brings it all together. It makes it all united, and transitions you from one thing to the next, and helps you move through that game. So. Undertale's incredible. Let's see. I have Shadow of the Colossus.
Number 7?
My number 7.
Nice.
Shadow of the Colossus. We talked about this a bit in the Journey podcast we did, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Where in order to achieve a sense of awe, you have to make your player feel small. Right? You make your player, your reader, if you're making a film, your viewers, you make them feel small under the scale of this amazing thing. That's where awe is achieved.
Yeah.
And there's very few games that have ever achieved that sense of awe and scale that Shadow of the Colossus has achieved.
I still remember the first time that I saw that game. It's just like, wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Your jaw drops when you see the size of these things. And then you realize you can climb them and you can interact with them. And holy crap, like, how am I going to do that? And the music, again, like, delivers the impact of that scale.
Yeah.
And it is one of the most, as far as like video game soundtracks go, delivers that like just almost gut punch of power and just sense of absolute awe and scale to a degree that I've rarely seen. And it's got a very unique flair to it. It's not like Hollywood in terms of its bombastic or large orchestral sound.
Gotcha.
It's definitely like got its own flavor of that, and it's very cohesive, and it's unified within that game's like world and feel and theme in a way that again just unifies that whole project. But like I gauge a lot of like what I think are the best pieces of music in gaming history on whether or not I have gone through the trouble of doing a remix of it.
There you go. That's a good measure.
This is one that I did. It's actually, it has another really funny memory. I actually finally learned how to do pinch harmonics on a guitar.
Doing this one?
When I was recording the tracks for my rock remix of the first boss battle, the first Colossus theme. And I totally overuse it in there, but I was just so excited that I could finally do pinch harmonics. I was pinch harmonicking after like every friggin'...
You just turned into Zakk Wylde. The spirit of Zakk Wylde just possesses your mind for a while. Yeah, that's fun.
But yeah, I guess in fear of just repeating the same thing, in conclusion, the way that game's music can communicate the scale of what it is that you're fighting is really impressive. The music feels just as big as those Colossus feel. Right.
Kind of like what we were talking about with Journey. It's like big music for big things, right?
Yes.
You know, with the caveat being, but once you're at the top of the mountain, then you don't need that big feeling anymore. But for the Colossus, it's like there's tons of these giants, and you're climbing all of them, and you need big music for big things like this.
Yeah, if you go and listen to the mixes of just any of these, and just like pay attention to the percussion, right? Like there's if anyone who's done audio mixing or like music composition before, your mix can get really muddy and lack clarity if you're just throwing tons of reverb on stuff.
Yeah,
that's how you make something feel big, is you give it tons of reverb. Because in the way sound interacts with space, if you're in a large tunnel or a large space, the sound will bounce and it takes time. And so like you get these long delays and big reverb that gives you a sense of large space or large scale. But if you're starting to use that on like again like a 30-40 piece orchestra, like you can start just making it sound so muddy, and there's so much reverberation that like you're losing clarity. And so there's really like, it's pretty amazing how they achieve that sense of just giant space on the percussion and on all the instruments, but there's such amazing clarity.
Really?
You can hear exactly what those strings are doing. The attack transients, exactly what those flutes and the woodwinds are doing, exactly what the brass is doing.
That's cool. That's harder than it sounds.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. And so it feels so big, but it doesn't lose that clarity. And I think that's another reason why I like it so much. But.
Very cool. Very cool.
All right, number 6.
Number 6. Did I not put a 6? I did put a 6.
You better have put a 6.
Number 6 for me is Ocarina of Time.
Really?
Yes. Ocarina of Time has... the whole game is designed around the music, right? Music is such a central part of these Zelda games.
That's true.
And even just the little simple playing your songs on an ocarina, those little simple tunes that you play are just, they're very cool. They're good in and of themselves. But once you play them, then you enter into kind of this more composed, this kind of like better version of it with accompaniment and all that. It's so funny to like be screwing around on the ocarina, playing all these notes, and then all of a sudden you just play the actual song, and then, or you just get off your ocarina and go, like you play it really fast, and then it enters you into the beautiful, no, slow it down, man, slow down. Play the song like this.
That's
this
so
is
relatable.
How it's supposed to be.
You're just like trying to fly through it in order to warp where you want to go.
Or Epona,
yeah.
You're just like boom, and I got pretty good at that. I think they used the R as well, and then the C button.
Yes,
right? So I got pretty fast at that. And a whole nother layer of fun was added with Majora's Mask when you play the guitar and you can do all that stuff there too. But Ocarina of Time has a soundtrack that I don't know. It's amazing. It's really good. It didn't even use that many tracks from Link to the Past.
No.
Like it does use a couple, like the Hyrule main theme and all of that stuff. But for the most part, it's just completely new music that Zelda has been using ever since in a lot of
it also
variants.
didn't use the classical Legend of Zelda theme.
That one.
No. I'm thinking of like.
That's right. You're right. Yeah.
So
Ocarina of Time
did not use that theme at all.
It didn't. I feel like it did like a variant of it on the main fields, but like unrecognizable.
Yes.
Basically.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of how that song goes now that I hear that. But either way, they didn't use much of the previous Zelda stuff.
Yeah.
And they composed like almost all new music for this game. And so this game just has a ton of original stuff that wasn't based on something previous to it.
Yeah.
So everything Majora's Mask and a lot of the games afterwards were kind of based on this. But this is the one that really kind of innovated in that space with the new console generation and a video game all about music that included just such good music, especially with the towns and the dungeons. But Kakariko and Gerudo and Kokiri. Like, just such good music.
You talked about how it's not using previous stuff, but so many games that followed Ocarina of Time use many of its musical leitmotifs in things like shops.
Right.
Yes, those types of things are carried over into Twilight Princess, into Wind Waker, into Majora's Mask.
Even Breath of the Wild, as minimalistic as that music is, it's using subtle Ocarina of Time, motifs. So there you have it. Ocarina of Time. Yeah. And it's brilliant. It's just so good. And you get that feeling of adventure, especially once you first step out into Hyrule Fields and you got to go run to the castle. You're just ready to go, man. That song is so perfect. And as the day and night cycle kind of moves, as soon as the sun rises, you hear that rooster cuckooing, right? Mm-hmm. And then with that flute, and it's that's
iconic.
That is what morning sounds like.
Yep,
they captured
a good way to put
the sound of the morning.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
It's so good, and you're ready for the day now, right? It's so much fun. Loved it.
So this is a good transition into my number 6. I think we're 6 around there.
Yeah.
Because Zelda is Koji Kondo.
Yeah, Koji Kondo.
And Koji Kondo
so good.
has composed so much music that it embodies my childhood, whether it's Mario, whether it's Zelda, whether it's just the swath of like Nintendo projects that he worked on.
Yeah, he's done so much.
But my favorite soundtrack of Koji Kondo's is Star Fox 64.
Oh, no way.
Star Fox 64
that game's great.
Has so much energy, very similar to the kind of thing I was talking about with Mega Man earlier, Mega Man 2, where you hear that music and you just like, you are motivated to like go, go and do something, accomplish at the essence of action. I hear this, I have to take action on something.
Gosh, man, we should put together a playlist that just pump people up.
Yes, it's got just absolutely iconic boss themes where you could put that to almost anything where you need a sense of urgency or like it's time to go, and you hear that and you're gonna feel like it's gonna move your body to do something.
That's funny.
I made a video probably 8 years ago at this point called How Music Moves Us or something.
I remember
like
that one. Yeah.
And I talked a lot about some of the science, or at least some of the studies going on right now about how music affects people, and how maybe a form of music was I guess a form of what we could classify as music would predate like language as far as evolving first among humans as a mode of communication and things like that. And how rhythm and music does quite literally move us. We have to move to it. There's you feel a need to dance, or you feel a need to move somewhere. It moves you emotionally. It like affects your emotions in a way that language doesn't.
Right.
I mean, not that language can't affect your emotions at all, but not in the same way as this does.
No.
And there is something about Star Fox's music that just immediately puts a smile on my face, no matter which track from that game you're playing. I've also done rock remixes of like a medley of Star Fox music. And I've talked a lot about the appeal that this game has for me being like very Saturday morning cartoonish in terms of like the actual characters. They're very obviously they're like talking, walking animals, right? So
in
like
space.
you have in space flying spaceships, and like the plot is like really simple in that Saturday morning cartoon kind of way, whether it's like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Biker Mice from Mars or whatever. It's got that feel, or like X-Men, maybe the X-Men cartoon we all grew up with, or Spider-Man or Batman or something. It's got like that sense to it, and there's so much energy that the actors like brought to it, so they can say really silly stuff like "do a barrel roll,"
do a barrel roll.
It hits, it works, and it lands, and it doesn't feel corny. It feels awesome,
and the music is helping to kind of bring that together.
And the music alongside that energy that the actors brought to it takes something that would otherwise feel like lame and just like makes it freaking awesome. Even as a 37-year-old, it feels freaking awesome.
That's good.
Almost like in a similar way to a lot of like B action movies from the 80s, right?
Oh, sure.
They have super corny lines, but like that actor has the charisma and like
he can pull it off
to like say that and have it land as being awesome instead of stupid. And that's kind of how Star Fox feels to me, where like they were on the razor's edge of creating something that I would dismiss as being like a lame thing for kids.
Yes.
It was for kids. But like, no, it actually does still feel, it has the energy and it has the sort of charisma about it to like still be fun to play and awesome even as an adult. And the music's a huge part of it for me. But
nice. I like what you say about music. It reminds me of a quote from Roger Scruton where he said that, today people mostly just speak in the slang vernacular.
Yes.
But, there's the formal way of speaking, which is more prose oriented. But before prose, there was poetry. All the ancient works that we have of Beowulf or the Iliad or Gilgamesh, they're poem. These are poems, right? So before prose was poetry.
They were singing it probably.
But before poetry was music.
Yeah.
And he ends it on that note saying, First was music.
Yep.
Everything else that we have grew out of music.
Yeah.
It's just a very cool thought. So number 5 for me is NieR, specifically NieR Replicant. But that
game over, dude. This game's so good.
I've got to bring up NieR Automata as well because for a lot of tracks in Automata, I think they use the same woman singing.
Ellie something or other, or Emmy. I think it's Emmy, E-M-I, Emmy.
I should have looked this up.
Something or other, but she's one of the best female vocalists I've ever heard in my life, period.
I agree.
She's incredible.
Yeah, the only thing I could compare her to maybe would be Enya's song from the end of the Fellowship of the Ring, right? Just like level of clarity and just perfection to the shape of her voice. Like
Emmy Evans, as Potato is telling us here. Emmy Evans. She's like world class. I don't care what anyone says. She's phenomenal.
Yeah, her voice is something else.
It's so good.
I would just kind of sit at the fountain at the center of the town in NieR and just listen to that music. Once again, as you step out of your door and you enter kind of into the town, and you're kind of running around and doing what you're doing, you immediately are confronted by that music, right? There's like this subtle kind of guitar-y kind of sound, and then her just beautiful, airy, just serene and divine voice singing, but it gives you this feeling within the town. There's a calmness, there is a serenity, but it's not the typical town music that you hear. That's like, ooh, the hustle and bustle of the town.
Yes.
It's a little more melancholy than that.
Yes.
And they really are able to translate that through beauty. There's a tinge of sadness to the music as well that you can kind of hear in her voice as she's kind of singing it. And it's part of the airiness, I guess, of her voice. But there's something in that is also kind of hinting at maybe some deeper themes within the game itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel personally, because they used her voice more often in NieR Replicant, I feel like NieR has the better soundtrack than NieR Automata. But that is, well, like, that was one of the things that shocked me the most playing NieR, was like, how have I not heard this before? It really blew me away.
I totally agree. And I think one of the things that I admire a lot about the NieR soundtracks, I think both of them, but I think this applies a little more to Replicant, just because the setting is... I think NieR Automata leans a little more into its sci-fi.
Yeah. And
NieR Replicant, while... I mean, the very first scene, of course, is kind of like a future thing, but then it seems to go into this almost medieval type setting.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more leaning into the fantasy side of things. And one thing that I see as a little bit of a sentiment from people is that maybe they're a little tired or fatigued of the expectations from a fantasy score being like kind of strictly orchestral or so heavily symphonic.
Yeah.
Like, let's try something else. Let's think outside of the box a little bit. Let's try some instruments you wouldn't typically expect in that sort of fantasy setting.
Yeah.
You know, this soundtrack feels a little generic fantasy to me. Those types of things.
Yeah.
And I think what NieR Replicant does really well is it doesn't like abandon or like jump outside of the expectations of a fantasy soundtrack.
Yeah.
But it does really good at bringing in some unique flavors that you might not expect.
Absolutely.
And blending them with sort of that traditional fantasy soundscape, maybe what you would expect, in a way that creates these really unique flavors. And that song you're talking about is one of those examples.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, wow, like I've never heard a fantasy score that feels quite like this.
Right, me neither.
Right?
There's also something else to it, which is the words she's saying. You can't pick up on it. You feel like you are getting what she's saying, I guess, in a way, just through the music and through, I don't know, you feel like you're understanding it. But as soon as you stop and try to listen to what she's saying, this is not a real language. This is something that was kind of made up just for the purposes of this game. And that kind of reminds me a little bit of Journey, the song at the very end of Journey as well. It's delivered in this way that is just beautiful, but it's almost better that you don't know what it's saying. I ended up having to look it up later. I'm like, oh, that's what it's saying. Okay, I get it now. The NieR soundtrack was, the language was basically created using the sounds of like some Hebrew, some Japanese, some French and English, and just crafted this basically like a syllable set that you can then use for music that is not technically saying anything. I mean, it probably is saying something, knowing Yoko Taro. But you're never going to know. He's never going to tell you.
Yeah.
But it's so cool, and that adds to the mystery, and that allures, that draws me in even more.
Yeah.
You give me some language I can't understand, I'm like, what are they doing? What are they doing? I've got to know what they're saying.
Yeah, it's like if you're not like paying attention, it can almost sound like, oh, she's singing English.
Yeah, totally.
But then you start trying to pick out the words like, that's not English. No. Oh, that sounds like French. Oh, wait a minute, that can't be French. That's not French. Is that Japanese? No, it's not Japanese.
Yeah,
like,
it's
you
so
like
weird.
Start
These are vastly
through,
different languages.
What the heck is she singing?
Yeah.
That's totally true.
It's so much fun, though, because music has this generally alluring nature. And I think often, especially in a video game, we've talked about this before, this is not a hard and fast rule 100% of the time. But generally speaking, if you can have tracks where people are not hearing words being spoken, that helps to kind of ease you into maybe the repetition of the music or to reading text or doing something else while not having to worry about what is being said technically to you. Right. And this was a brilliant way to kind of have it both ways, to feel like you're being sung to, but then also not know what it's saying.
Yeah.
Just so well done.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. All right, number 5 for me is a little game called The Unfinished Swan.
Yeah, I've never heard of this. No, I haven't.
It was one of those sort of like low-budget indie walking simulators that were popular there for a while.
Okay.
Maybe like Edith Finch.
Yes.
Or what was that other one that I was really into? I can't remember the name of it right now. It was like an island that you walked around on. And you like discover what happened there by reading diary entries and things like that.
I remember you playing this.
So anyway, I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's one of those types of games. You're just kind of like moving through an environment, but you're using paint and color to sort of like give dimension to the world. So it's like a white canvas, and you're like throwing paint and to reveal the geometry. So when it like hits, it like you see the corners, cool. and so it becomes more. The world gains more dimension as you're moving through it and more color and things like that. But it's sort of based on this boy whose mother was an artist, and she would paint, and she dies when he's young. And so he goes into this world where he's sort of like exploring her paintings. And one of his favorite paintings of hers was this swan that she didn't finish. She didn't finish the painting. And so he's following that swan through this world as it like leads him into it. It's got a very fairy tale-esque sort of feel to it. And the music is just magical. So I feel like this is one I almost like got to show you to like explain.
Let's check it out.
Why I like it so much, because it weaves a lot again of really interesting and like different types of sounds. It's got like that again very strong sort of like expectation or what you would typically expect in a fantasy or like fairy tale kind of world.
Yeah.
So it's got some of those like lullaby type instruments, whether it's a musical box or chimes or those sorts of things, harps that are like sort of like the term I'm thinking of is palm mute, but that's not what it's called. Like the plucking, like that really a fast attack transient on the plucking of a harp, not the long sort of echo note, but just like the
unsustained. I'm trying to think of what that would even
I'm not sure what the musical term is.
It is muted because it would be the left pedal on a piano,
and you just
something like
and you just pluck that. So it's got a lot of that,
like a staccato.
But it's also got like these really interesting sort of like triangle and sine waves that you would hear in traditional like old school video game music, as just like filling in the soundscape. But it creates this real sense of mystery and almost like just wittiness, maybe a little bit of like a young boy getting into trouble and doing something maybe like dangerous that like his parents wouldn't like, going into this other world and going out by himself. So I'm just going to play a quick track from this so you can get a sense of what I'm talking about.
I know this song.
It's so good.
Huh.
So you get a sweeping orchestra that'll come in under that, right? You fill it out for a second.
Yeah.
Then he pulls it away for like a really interesting soundscape there. And then you get this. There's so much going on there in between your ears if you're listening to the stereo. And then sweep again. Or sorry, this didn't work. It just the way it moves is it never gives you time to really like see where it's going. It's like changing direction again. It's like, whoa, where's that? And then
you're right.
It just stays interesting. And you can't really predict where it's going next. And then like I think one of my favorite ones is like the third track here. It has some really cool soundscapes in it. I really love the bass. It's like it almost just shakes you to your core. It's like very heavy and like slow vibrations that just sort of sits underneath that, and it's just like whoa, like boom, like big impact. I don't think this is the one I was thinking of, but anyway, maybe I'll find the one where it had some of like the traditional game sounds. Okay, it's not that one. Anyway, I'll go off of that for now. But it's a phenomenal soundtrack, and it's a game that not very many people have heard of, and I totally recommend it. I don't know where you could get it other than it was on the PlayStation 3. It was like a downloadable only game kind of thing. Really? It was a digital only thing. I don't think there's any physical copy that was ever made for it. Very short. You could probably beat it in like 2 to 3, maybe 4 hours. And you kind of just, the story sort of narrated to you as you're walking through the world, but it's just very, very interesting and very unique artistically. And a story about a child sort of dealing with the loss of his mother that is very simple, but like really hits home and is executed very well. So absolutely love the soundtrack on that one. It's fantastic.
Nice. Number 4. Are we on number 4? Yeah, we have to be.
Dude, my guy's saying you can get it for $5 on Steam. So Unfinished Swan is on Steam. Pick it up. It's only $5. It's short, but it's like a really good game. I really recommend it.
Number 4 for me is The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker.
Wind Waker was my favorite Zelda soundtrack.
So I only have 2 Zeldas on this list. Don't worry. This is it. This is the peak Zelda. But Wind Waker delivered music to me on just a level that was my goodness. Ocarina of Time is really good, but there's the limitations of the N64 and what it was able to do and how deep the music was able to go. The music above this was on even lower systems than this in terms of my rankings.
Right.
It's not just that. But there was something about the GameCube that was able to deliver you this beautiful cello sound, the beautiful bass and the way that it could mix sounds together better than the previous consoles before it. Basically just CD quality, which everything from there on. Well, even the PS1 had it, but Nintendo didn't have it until the GameCube. But the music for Wind Waker, it is the perfect complement to the gameplay. Especially, as I've brought up in the past, when you're sailing on the seas and you hear that do-do-do-do-do.
Yes. Oh, gosh, it's so good.
And I'm just ready to go. When I go out and if I find myself sailing on the seas, which I have not yet done, but I've been in boats on lakes before.
Oh, have you never been?
I've never
been on the ocean before?
The sea. I've been there, but I've never been on a boat.
It's freaking sweet.
I've never been on a boat in the
last time.
No, actually, I have. I went on a cruise. I've been on a cruise before, and I did think of Wind Waker while I was on a cruise.
You were on there.
But when you're on a cruise, you feel somewhat separated from the water. It was about 6 stories below me.
Big cruise ships are not. That's not really sailing.
Yeah, I didn't even really feel the rocking of the ship. It was pretty much a
I
solid
went out
building.
on a sailboat. And we saw bottlenose dolphins jumping in front of the ship. I took video of it.
So cool.
It was the dopest thing ever. And I was sitting on kind of like a net that they put through. So it's one of those boats that have like the long. I don't know the nautical terminology.
I know what you're talking about.
They have like the long
almost.
skis.
Yeah.
And then in between them on the front, there's sort of a net you can sit on, but you can see through it into the water.
Ah, nice.
And so like I'm watching them swimming underneath me. And like coming up and jumping and doing their twirls and stuff. It was one of the best experiences in my life.
I tell you what, but did you keep your eye out for any glows that indicate hidden treasure? if you stop right there.
I should have put the crane down.
Yeah, but get the crane, grab something. The Wind Waker gave me the vicarious experience of being on the ocean. And even more than that, when the music fades away, it's still special. It's not just the music here, but the music is the perfect complement to the sailing. Now, I think they nailed it so much so that when the music fades away and it's just you and the waves and the wind, that it still works. The game is that special. But the music, especially with all of the towns, Dragon Roost Isle, and everything that they did there, the music complements the gameplay so well. Yeah. When you're playing Battleship with that funny guy who's pretending to be a pirate, and with all of the boss battles, and especially the way the ending of that game is very magical. If you've never experienced it, you should. But the when you kind of make your way into Hyrule, and the way that they kind of take different variants on the theme, but they have this water presence within the music as well. Everything just feels so cool. But that music had a huge impact on me, and I do not think that Zelda has quite
reached that level
since.
Yeah.
I did not, however, like the wand as much. The Wind Waker wand. It was like
the conductor's.
There was the time signatures, but it was less. It was less cool than doing the C buttons and the R. I think Ocarina of Time got the you actually playing the ocarina down a little bit better. Actually, Majora's Mask did it the best. But that the music outside of that with Wind Waker is in my opinion the best in the series.
I liked it. I liked it as because it's more like you're directing the wind, like which way you want it to go. So you're like directing an orchestra. You're directing the wind, like blow this way, blow this way.
I do like it as well. I love the concept, but da 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 isn't like even a song. Like it's what commercial? There's a company that at the end of their commercials they
have like a 3-tone.
It's a 3-tone thing, and it's just it's like a credit card or something. I can't remember what it is. But it wasn't as Ocarina of Time did that part better. But all of the rest of the music that really filled out the world, and especially at Outset Island at the beginning, it's so good. It's so good. It's so much fun, and you feel. It just makes you want to go there and be there.
Once again, I gauge how good the soundtrack is by did I pick a song and do a remix of it, and I did for this.
Yes,
so
that's right, we did. Oh, that was a fun one too.
Okay, let's see. We're on number 4. Are we on number 4 now?
We are on number 4.
For me, it is Super Smash Brothers Melee.
Yeah, that's crazy. I thought of this one, but.
I don't even know like how to describe this. We did a video that was top 10 best video game intros, and I did not include Super Smash Brothers Melee on it because we were talking mostly about narrative, opening sequences. We were talking about how do you do a strong hook into your story, and how do you. So we weren't talking about like the title screen. FMV openings, that's a whole different category, and this one's number 1 for me.
Really?
This was a combination of things. One, it was the jump from the Nintendo 64 to the GameCube, because it was the first GameCube game that my brothers and I had. So it was like a whoa.
Yeah.
This was back when jumps between gaming generations really felt like absolutely
not like
absurd.
Anymore. Yeah.
There is something about the jump from the N64 Smash Brothers, which came at the end of the N64's life, to Smash Brothers Melee was kind of at the beginning of the GameCube's life. And so this jump in quality of like the FMV sequences even was just, I was just transfixed. And the music that plays really moves through a lot of different emotions.
Yeah.
It's bombastic and big, but fun. And that's something that I really appreciate about Nintendo games too, is like they can be like awesome and have a sense of urgency, but like never lose their primary sense of fun. And that's something that Smash Brothers music in general, I think all of them, but like Melee's my favorite of the games musically. It has that call to adventure, fun, like underlying all of its fest. Moving sort of like percussion and like urgent battle-esque sort of like feelings. It's not like aggressive, but it's a battle and it's urgent and you're fighting, but it's fun. It's not violent and aggressive like Doom or something. You know what I mean? And so it's got this very adventurous feel to it. And I love, especially in the Smash Brothers soundtracks, all of those sort of motifs that are like the Smash Brothers original music. Dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
Dun 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 dun. You can feel that. You started coming into the beat on that, right? It's very percussive and strong and urgent, but not in this like aggressive, violent way, in this very fun call to adventure kind of way.
Yeah.
It's that spirit of adventure that's there.
It's a way that you don't stop smiling.
Yes. And I think that's really important for this game, because this game is not just a brawler or fighting game, right?
Right, it's not like Soul Calibur.
It's actually more of an exploration of the history of the legacy of these games and characters.
Right, that's true. Yeah.
That to me has always been the greater call or like appeal of Smash Brothers, more so than it's, you get with your buddies and you're fighting. Right. It was, oh, who is this secret character? What is that franchise? Let's read about what game that comes from. Yeah. Oh, I've never played that before.
Why does this level function the way that it does?
Yeah.
Right? Oh, that's weird. Yeah.
This musical motif comes from this series I've never played before. Right. I really like that music. Who is this Marth character? Yeah, why have I never heard of Fire Emblem? What's that? And then I go out and buy Fire Emblem because of that. Or I go out and buy Earthbound because of that. Or I go out and buy something I've never played before. And so it sort of, in its music, it sort of prioritizes that sort of exploration, discovery, and adventure rather than the fighting aspect. Yeah. And I think that spirit of Smash Brothers is something that really appealed to me. And when it was the only game we had on the GameCube, it basically was like, it's like a perfect first game for that console, because it then opens your eyes to be like, I'd like to try that character from his game and that character from her game, and like, let me go see what they have available. And so you go out and buy more games for your new system or whatever, because you've been introduced to them through Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
So,
which is why a ton of third-party developers want to get their character into Smash these days.
Yeah. And the music, I feel like, carries that kind of spirit of discovery, and I really love it.
Well, the most some of the funnest moments of me growing up was playing Smash Melee, just chilling, and all of a sudden a new challenger approaches.
Yes.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. The sirens go off.
The alarm.
And immediately me shouting, Parker! Because I don't want to lose.
That's so true.
He was the best. And I was like, dude, here's the controller. Like, we would be playing against each other, fighting, and I'm like trying to beat him, and oh no. And as soon as it's a new challenger, I'm just like, oh, dude, Parker, play.
Take it.
Let's get
him.
Who
Make
is
sure
it?
you
Who
get
is
it. Don't lose.
But we didn't know who a lot of these characters were. It was so much fun to play that game at that time, because nowadays they announce everything ahead of time. You kind of know what's coming in the whole roster. I don't know where Smash is going to go in the future. I hope they don't just keep expanding the roster.
I don't know how they could.
It's
at this
so
point.
big.
It's immense.
I mean, there's always a few more side characters from every game
I'm
ever.
sure they could, but balancing that becomes a real problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But just make more Fire Emblem clones, and you're. But back in the day when we didn't know how big the roster was going to be, we didn't know who was going to be in these games, and it would show that silhouette, new challenger approaching, and it's like a question mark, and you can't see him, and then it's like, what is happening? This is the coolest thing ever, and sometimes you lose, and you got to do it again. But that was just magical. That was so much fun.
It's great.
So much fun.
Smash is fantastic.
All right, we are on to number 3. Number 3 for me is Donkey Kong Country 2.
Oh my!
The second one, Diddy's Conquest.
So I'm cheating here, and I'm including Donkey Kong Country 1 to talk in with yours, to slip it in there. But yeah, Donkey Kong Country music is David Weiss is the composer.
Yeah,
and he might be one of the greatest game composers of all time.
Yeah,
he's very, very rarely touted as such, but he is.
I tell you what, this soundtrack is amazing. If you haven't heard it, go familiarize yourself with it. In the first game, Donkey Kong is the main character, right? In this game, it's Diddy Kong for the most part. You've got to save Donkey Kong. And then in the third game, Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong are gone, and you've got to play as Kiddy Kong and Dixie Kong.
Dixie Kong, yeah.
Yeah, it was fun stuff. But the music is something else, especially for the SNES era. It's really special. But there are moments in this game where you kind of forget what type of game you're playing. Like, you're throwing barrels at these big walking alligators, and they're going as they die, and they fall off the map. And sometimes you get 3 at once, and it's like
That's exactly what it sounds like,
dude. I used to play this game, man. Or I used to act out this game when I wasn't allowed to play TV.
Oh my gosh. That's freaking fun.
It's hilarious. And then you'll be on a big pirate ship, or you'll be climbing the inside of a giant beehive. And there are moments in the game where you forget what kind of game you're playing. And there are moments where you're climbing the web, right? And you're just hearing the music, and there are no enemies. And you see the background, and the clouds are moving, and you're moving higher and higher up this level, and you don't know when it's going to end. You're just going and going. And there's something similar to when Link is sailing the seas in Wind Waker. These are the moments that get me. And in Donkey Kong Country 2, there are many, many moments where it's serene, and you begin to wonder. It begins to inspire wonder, and the idea that there's like that there's something deeper to life.
Yes.
And you're playing this silly side-scrolling game, and here you are, and the music, I think, is a big part of that. As the music is playing, as you're climbing up this beautiful landscape, and it's really just the beauty of it that makes you kind of just slowly feel this feeling of awe. Also, sometimes a wonder of what's coming next, right? The games sometimes can be difficult, but for the most part, they're pretty easy. But it took the time to deliver moments that made you just kind of appreciate its beauty. And it did that maybe every few levels or so. There were these moments that you don't usually get in side-scrollers like this. They usually don't care, and the player usually doesn't care to have these moments either. Like, where's the next thing? Come on, let's go. I'm done climbing, right? But this game lingers on those for just a little bit longer than most people want to. And your mind does kind of start to wander, right? Like, what is this world like? You know? Like, what is the point of all of this? like what am I doing here? And then, okay, here's some more enemies. But those moments are the ones that I remember. I don't remember so much about the games. I remember a lot about swinging from the vines when there's no enemy in sight, and we're just like going to, it's a side scroll. You don't know exactly where you're going. There's a huge mystery. There's a lot of veils, right? You can't see beyond the end of the screen. But the music adds to the wonder. And it's got this ethereal sound to it also that almost just feels like it feels like it shouldn't belong in this type of game.
Yeah.
It feels very important, but it's contemplative. That's probably the best word for it. It's very contemplative.
Word is perfect.
Yeah. And as a kid, I didn't contemplate much. I was going from one thing to the other, bouncing off the walls and just trying to have fun and play games. This game forced me for brief moments to become contemplative and introspective.
Yeah.
And then I would keep playing, but when the game was over and I'd be thinking about what we just played, gosh, what would it be like to not have to just kill everything I see, but just to be on a pirate ship in that world, in to experience these environments just as they are, right? Instead of worrying so much about having to make sure I'm killing everything all the time. It's so beautiful.
There's something really special about Donkey Kong Country. This is kind of a franchise for Nintendo that hadn't really been, well, I don't want to say hadn't been at all, but like...
Because that first Mario technically was
this was sort of
like
reinvented in a way that has now become the identity of Donkey Kong within the pantheon of Nintendo's characters, right? And there is a depth to Donkey Kong in more ways than one.
Well, you've got Cranky Kong and
yeah, but like they didn't draw the characters in this. You're right. They sculpted or made 3D models that they then just take individual images of as and then from different angles when they turn.
Which apparently nobody had thought of doing before. Like it was a brilliant, innovative move.
They did the same thing for Mario RPG, right? Those are 3D models. They're sprites, but it's a single image from a 3D model
from
at
a 3D
different
model.
angles.
So you can fake the 3D basically.
Yes, exactly.
It looked really
on the
good
Super
for the time.
Nintendo, which anyway. Yeah. So there's like this depth to the colors, to like because it's a 3D model. Yeah. There's a depth to it that it doesn't look flat. Yep. Like a sprite, like a hand-drawn sprite character had.
Yeah.
And the music also has this real sense of depth in its soundscape, and that is due to the innovations of David Weiss. Because making music, I don't like have time. We've been going for like an hour and 45 minutes to like get into like the technicalities of how limited the music, like writing music and doing sound on these consoles were.
Yeah.
But you basically had 8 channels of sound on the Super Nintendo, and I think it was like 64 kilobytes of memory for the entire sound of the whole game.
That's
every
crazy.
Single track, every single instrument, every single sound effect. They had this 64 kilobyte like memory bank basically to get all of that stuff inside of. Dang. And so it's super limited, but the depth of the soundscapes he creates, it does not sound like 8 channels of sound. Like that sounds like far deeper and richer and more complex than that. And if you want to watch a great video that explains why that is, go to the Nerd Writer is the name of the channel, and look up a video called like Super Nintendo, how Super Nintendo music was made or something like that.
Yeah.
And he specifically highlights how David Weiss achieved this depth of sound and this complexity and just texture in the music where it shouldn't be possible.
No.
So like aquatic ambience is
Yes.
like a great example of this.
Yeah.
There is just so much happening in the soundscape of that music that is so complex and just so much texture and richness to that. And of course, a great melody carrying it that embodies what you're talking about. It's what creates those moments of contemplation.
Yeah.
Because there's something deeper here than what you expect.
That's it.
From a side-scrolling 2D platforming game. Especially one about Donkey Kong and trying to get his bananas back or whatever the story is.
From the fat alligator that's stolen.
Like, you don't expect to feel the depths of emotions and like the complexity that you're somehow feeling in this thing that doesn't seem to have it.
Right.
But it's there, and a lot of it is I think created from this sort of like extra depth that they got in the mixture of these 3D visuals that are not 3D but look 3D with this soundscape that has this depth to it that it shouldn't be allowed to have on this hardware. It shouldn't be possible.
And you could almost say that that these techniques were wasted on something like Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
But that's not. I don't think that's the case.
No.
The games themselves are really. There's a reason why Nintendo's still making Donkey Kong games in this style, right? The side scrolling. They tried to do the 3D with Donkey Kong 64.
It's a good game.
It's
not the same.
It's not the same. And they've returned to form, and Donkey Kong was meant to be experienced in this way. And the games are so much fun, and they appealed perfectly towards younger people. Mm-hmm. And of course, something like this that got me to enjoy and contemplate the simple moments.
Mm-hmm. So for number 3, I'm going to put Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I'll just kind of put like a slash and like kind of also include Xenoblade Chronicles 1.
Yeah. Hey, that's fine.
Xenoblade Chronicles, both 1 and 2, actually the whole series has great music, but the first game was composed by like a number of different composers. Yoko Shimomura composed a lot of tracks on that one.
Nice.
And then there's this other group called like Ace something or other that did a lot of like the really iconic like map themes and stuff.
Okay.
And then the ending theme for like the credits was done by Yasunori Mitsuda.
Oh, Mitsuda.
Who is my favorite video game composer.
Oh, wow.
Who then went on to lead Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and 3's soundtracks.
Okay, nice.
In collaboration with Ace and some others, but he was like the main composer on those. So there's just a flavor to soundtracks like this that I have to admit, like, it just strikes a chord with me. There's something about these RPGs that are as like grand and expansive as these kind of saving the world type like role-playing games from Japan that have these like real melancholic bents to their tone and what they're going for. Some people might call it a little bit sappy or like melodramatic.
Yeah.
But like there's something about it that just really strikes me. And you'll always have that piano piece, that slow piano piece and those soft strings. And there's something I feel like that these games capture as far as going for that tone, that emotion that they're trying to like get you to feel that, and the music just pulls it out of me every time. So I listen to these soundtracks while I write like my own story.
Oh yeah.
Because like I'm trying to embody that emotion and they just perfectly encapsulate it. And on top of that, they just have these amazing battle themes with just these sailing guitars that just like come in over the top, and it's just like, yes, dude. You just get so pumped to fight. I'm not even like a big fan of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Like I love the first game. The second game I'm a little more iffy on, but the soundtrack justifies its existence like I don't care about the game. The fact that this soundtrack exists has like enriched my life so much.
That's awesome. That's great.
It's so good.
That's
it's like my go-to soundtrack for when I'm writing or just like in the car, like driving around, trying to contemplate my life or trying to work through a problem. Like that's the music I turn to, is the Xenoblade Chronicles 2 soundtrack in particular. The Elysium theme and like a bunch of others are just like, I no matter how many times I hear it, like I return to it and it just gets me immediately in that like emotional state to sort of like rethink some things, really be like honest with myself, reflect on certain things in my life that aren't working and what do I need to do to improve, those types of things. So Yasunori Mitsuda is who I sort of credit as like speaking my language, so to speak, with his music. But even like Xenoblade Chronicles X has a couple of like theme X in Xenoblade Chronicles X is like, there's just this, there's a very specific, I can only describe it as like a sailing type feeling where you are ascending to like the highest highs, like you are on a ship that is taking you out of the atmosphere and onto the beyond. There's a certain essence that is captured by Xenoblade Chronicles music that gives me that feeling of like ascending to something awesome and amazing, and it's I'm being carried there. It's like a wind has caught under my sails, just taking me up.
That's cool.
It captures that in a lot of its battle music and in Theme X in Xenoblade Chronicles. But amazing soundtracks. That's number 3 for me. Right? We're on 3? Yeah. Number 2 now.
Chrono Trigger.
Chrono Triggers.
Yeah. So
Yasunori Mitsuda. Again.
Yasunori Mitsuda, of course. I understand that you likely had this on your list before
I did.
We compared lists.
I did. In fact, it would have been number 2 as well. So
Chrono Trigger. There you go. Chrono Trigger is the game that it's a game, one of the few games for which I experienced the music before playing the game for a long time. Of course, OC remixes back in the day had some just fun, and the tracks that got remixed tended to be from a few handful of games got the majority of the remixes. We'll just put it that way. Final Fantasy heavily overrepresented there. Chrono Trigger punched well above its weight in terms of like the amount of music, the amount of remixes that Chrono Trigger has received is just through the roof.
Oh yeah,
and there were some very high quality ones. But the ones that I remember the most are the ones that I ended up learning myself on the piano, and that was Klutz's remixes.
Yep, I did the same thing.
Oh, they're so good. The town, and then 600 AD. Those songs were so good, and it's so funny because I hadn't even played the game yet. I just heard the song, and I knew I have to experience whatever this is pointing towards, right? But for me, before having the game, it was just pointing towards beauty in and of itself, right? It's so strange to hear music that is meant to be experienced with something, but hearing it in isolation without even having experienced the other thing in the first place, right? In some ways, I was afraid to play Chrono Trigger for a long time because I was like, it won't be as good as what the image in my mind, the image that comes to my mind based on how meaningful this music is and how beautiful it is, how well done it was, how well it was composed, is something that can't live up to reality, right? Now, I did end up playing the game. It's been a long time since I've played it, but the game is amazing as well. It was very different from what I thought it would be. I did not have Dragon Ball Z images in mind when I heard this music.
Yeah.
And because of that, I actually have a very separate experiences between the music and the game itself. So when I hear the music, it doesn't make me nostalgic for the game necessarily. It makes me nostalgic for just like that time in my life. And that music was unattached to anything else during that time except for whatever I was going through at the time, right? And this was around the time when we moved from Arizona to Colorado. And this was the music that I would listen to when I was just like felt alone because I didn't have any friends anymore. Everyone, all like you were still in Arizona. I had to move. Then you moved to Utah. And then I was just like, man, I'm never going to see these people again. I'm not like, I don't know. But then I would put on the music that I had from that time. I was 17 or so, and this was one of them. That particular remix was one of them.
Remix.
And I was like, man, it's just the experience of beauty. It doesn't mask the wound per se.
Yes.
But it does almost give you a companion to suffer with, if that makes sense.
The words that you are putting to this are exactly like kind of what I was talking about. I described it as melancholic, but like you're putting a much better point on this like duality of feeling.
Yeah.
When a song or when a piece of music can simultaneously feel like it's understanding the depth of my pain, but at the same time giving me some kind of hope for the future.
Isn't that strange?
That is what speaks to me. And Yasunori Mitsuda writes music like that all of the time.
Yes.
It's like his thing.
Yeah.
The emotion he creates in his music is that dual accompanying thing. I can feel simultaneously okay about where I'm at and okay about the future. I'm going to be all right. But like I'm struggling right now. It's hard. I feel a lot of pain. And this is giving me comfort in that, but it's not alleviating it.
Right, it's not.
And I love that.
But you're almost finding beauty within it.
Yes.
Right?
And Mono no Aware sort of,
Mono no Aware.
It's a feeling of like appreciation or beauty in the passing of something. And it's so hard to put words to it, but you're doing a really good job.
And at the time, I just felt like my world was over, right? I had a girlfriend in Arizona, and I was just my life was there, and so I had to go start a new life somewhere else. And that was very painful. It was very, very difficult for me. I don't know. In some ways, maybe it taught me to appreciate even the hard times. I don't know. Like I'm nostalgic for those times now. Those were hard times for me. Yet I look back on them with fondness.
That's another great way to put it. That's a great way to put it.
We are the weirdest
so weird
things in the universe. Also, like just humanity's love for the minor chord.
Yeah. Yes.
I can't explain it. I can't explain it.
How can you put all these perfect words to it? What is it about that minor chord, that sad feeling that makes me feel so good? It burns so good.
There's something, it burns so good. That's it. It hurts so good. There's something just about, and of course, music itself. I mean, the whole Pythagorean philosophy on, the connection between music and the universe as a whole, that there's like a resonance there that is exemplified within these specifically 7 tones, it's 7 notes, and then the 8th is kind of the repetition, and you get the same thing at a different scale. It's the fractaling in and out, right?
Yes.
And you can play the same thing, but it sounds different, but it's the same thing because you're at a different key, you're at a different octave.
Because that's something he does a lot too, is arpeggios. Like Yasunori Mitsuda is like arpeggioing all over the freaking place. He's just arpeggio here, arpeggio here, arpeggio. Here's this musical arpeggio theme that I mix into here and here and here, and arpeggio everywhere. I start it with an arpeggio, I take it out with an arpeggio.
And arpeggios are fascinating because they play with silence a lot.
Yes.
Because it's staccato. It's like you hear the and then there's a moment before the next one,
an interval,
and they're not sustained notes, right? It's just do 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 do, and Mitsuda, of course, is also the music is very patterned, right? Yeah. It's just audible patterns that then stack.
Yes.
And then slowly ease.
Yes.
But once again, you're just experiencing a pattern on multiple levels, right? And it's like, what if I now add this new pattern? And a lot of music is like this, but Mitsuda in particular, it writes music in that specific way,
it's
where
the
that one pattern keeps
style.
going the whole time, but then you get these other kind of patterns stacked on top, and then we'll undo some of the stacking and then restack it and then undo it halfway and then all the way. And it really kind of resonates with just like Pythagoras' theory of the universe itself, right?
Yes.
Which is where the whole idea of the octave even comes from.
Yes.
And there's something about it that is just, you feel that within the beauty, there is like truth and goodness.
Yes.
Just because there is beauty, then there must be goodness. And that the experience of these things gives you something that you can just say that you are experiencing truth as such. and you just get to hear it. And you don't even know what it is. You can't articulate it, but it doesn't matter. There's something that resonates between you and the cosmos, and you found it. And yes, it does not diminish your suffering. It doesn't. It doesn't. But it gives you a companion to suffer with that in a spiritual way can still be fulfilling and that can help you get through times. I don't know, like, especially in modern the modern days of, now.
Yeah.
Gosh, there's a reason why teenagers are so attached to music, right? Like, in some ways, these are the best of times, but in other ways, these are the worst of times, right? It's harder to go through life despite how easy everything has been made for us with technology. And without the aid of music, things would be so much worse, so especially for teenagers.
Yeah. So I made a mistake. I should have pushed everything on this list up one. Yeah. And I forgot to talk about Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm also putting Chrono Trigger number 2 because that's really what I would have done anyways.
Yeah.
I can't not pick Chrono Trigger as my second or first favorite OST of all time. It's just amazing. Yeah, but I will very briefly say Phoenix Wright has some of the best music in any video game. It also is one of those games I appreciate a lot that moves between being extremely silly and then like really urgent and like creating some serious dramatic gravitas. Particularly, I can't remember the name of the track, but it's the one where you're really pressing, where you're on the verge of getting the truth out of the person, and they're against the wall. They're against the wall.
I like Ace Attorney, but I was always a Professor Layton guy.
Yeah, those are great games too.
I played the first 3 of those, the DS ones. They're so good.
That's the one.
Oh man!
So that is almost like the climactic musical motif of the game.
Yeah,
because you do all this investigation, and you're in a situation that seems impossible. My client is definitely guilty. But like my job is to find out how they're not. They swear to me they're not. Even when your client is confessing their guilt, they're pleading guilty. They're like, I'm. Yeah. It's you dig for the reason why, who they're trying to protect, or some other reason that they feel the pressure to do that. But the situation always seems like it's impossible. How am I, this bumbling guy who doesn't really know what he's doing? So I was just like last week, I was just sort of a junior attorney. And now I'm getting clients and having all this pressure. How am I going to do this? And you have to do all this work, and it builds up to this specific moment. And of course, the game's very silly, and it's got all these zany themes and great character moments and all these amazing characters in terms of their design and stuff like that. It's very fun. It never loses its sense of fun. But everything builds up to that moment where you've got this person who's lying to you in court on the ropes, and you are going in with big right hooks, just like swinging them, and they can't. There's nothing. They're sweating. They're like, they're like freaking out, and that music embodies that feeling of triumph. Like I worked so hard to get right here, and I am taking. I'm taking my shot. I'm swinging for the fences. This is my time.
Right.
That track embodies that feeling. It's so exhilarating, and you're just like, again, it's almost like Punch Out in a way, right? Where you just got them on the rope. Bang,
that's
boom,
right. They're
boom,
holding the ropes.
Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Just like hook after hook after hook, and it's just, like I said, an exhilarating feeling. So I wanted to talk briefly about Phoenix Wright and say that is definitely one of the best soundtracks of all time.
Yeah.
But for those 2 reasons. One, it handles all those different sort of emotions and can swing freely between being silly to being kind of like urgent and serious. And it's just a ton of fun. And then it's that particular musical building up to that moment that is just like, it glues it all together. So, but Chrono Trigger would have been my second. So let's go to number 1.
Okay. So number 1 for me is Super Mario RPG. This game was composed by Yoko Shimomura.
Again, Shimomura.
Shimomura is very good, has done incredible work for decades now. It's been a long time since Street Fighter 2, right? Mm-hmm. It's hard to put into words what this one means to me. It's crazy because there's a big family connection there. I played these games with my brothers. We had a tight brotherhood. A lot of people aren't super close with their brothers, but I am. And so this game was a big part of that. This was one of the first, like, maybe more story-oriented games that we cared to play. And, it's got more or less a simple story. It's mostly funny and silly and fun. But going through that whole thing and experiencing an RPG for the first time, there was something about that game that kind of changed the way that I look at games just in general. It made me realize maybe what's possible within even like a simple construct with a game, that you can just change something really simple. And just the idea of an RPG, just like, oh, let's just take turns attacking each other. Like, what the heck? But then all of a sudden my mind expands with strategy that I normally wouldn't think about. But the thing that really made Mario RPG work so well was the music. And it's music that I have listened to many times since I first experienced it. And there is a ton of nostalgia in my reasoning for putting this game as number one. But I do have a story, and I hope I can tell it properly. Okay, so this was like 7 years ago.
So not like when the game came out.
I already loved the music.
Yeah.
I've loved the music for a long time, but this game is number one forever for me forever, and I'm not embarrassed about it. I don't care.
Yes, unapologetic.
Yeah, about 7 years ago, a friend of mine's mother died. And so just, I don't know. I get emotional sometimes, but
yeah, it's tough, man.
His father, he never really knew his father. His father didn't care about him. And anyways, it was a rough time. So he's on the autism spectrum as well.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh my gosh, like what's his future, right?
Yeah, what's he gonna
It was
do?
very difficult. And his brothers, they are a lot older than him, and they, it was going to be difficult.
Was he going to be able to take care of himself?
He found a foster family, basically. He was an adult. He's an adult, but he still needs help,
Yeah,
so he has, honestly, my wife found him a family, basically.
Oh, nice. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a great thing about your wife, too. For those of you who don't know
She's so good.
about Kaysen's wife, Breezy, she works in this field of taking care of people with disabilities, and she's amazing in that way. So that's exactly what I would expect her to do.
Yeah. So anyways, we were in the car with him right after, like literally taking him from his house where his mother was still on the floor dead. And man, yeah, it's rough stuff. And he doesn't express emotion very easily, right? And so it was like no one knew what to say. And so, my wife was like, hey, Kaysen, you should put on some music. And I'm like, I don't know what music to put on. You kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, what can, make this better? And I couldn't think of anything. And so I'm talking to him like, hey, like, what's your, what do you like? And he loves video game music. He just loves listening to video game music. And I'm like, well, I don't have that. This was long enough ago, and I couldn't just stream, stuff. I probably could have. I don't know. I actually don't even know how I got it. I think it was actually a stream that I had. But I didn't have at the time a great way to just play whatever song, right? And he didn't really give me any direction. But I asked him, I was like, hey, do you like what? I've got Mario RPG here. Anyways, this is so dumb. Why am I telling this story? It just means a lot to me. But, so we put on the song Looking Through the Window at the Stars.
Good piece. Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like, my mom's still around. But being with somebody who was going through such a hard time, and being able to kind of like feel that he was able to kind of like let go a little bit. He's not the most eloquent talker, but I could tell that it actually meant a lot to him in the ways that he can show that, And so anyways, vicariously because of that, then the song just gained this whole new layer of meaning for me.
Yeah.
Where it's like, because that track there, it's all about like there's this story about a U.S. military veteran who was in prison in Vietnam, and he was being tortured, and he was about ready to divulge all the secrets and betray his friends and all that stuff because it was so awful. But he just happened, almost like in Lord of the Rings, where Sam and Frodo, the clouds dispersed for one moment so that they could see that one star that was, I think, Venus. But it was, they were like, oh, look at this. You can see a star. Let's keep going. It gave him strength. So this guy looked through the window briefly, and he saw the North Star at the time. And he goes, this is like, it gave him this new like vigor, this new strength to like resist and to not, and he found meaning in that one simple moment. That was, that whole thing. Anyways, and the whole Mario RPG game is all about like the wishes and the stars and the Star Road and what if people's wishes don't come true and all that. And it's changed the way that I even look at the stars nowadays too, right? Where it's just like, man, these stars mean something, you know? Yeah. They're not like you can reduce things to their constituent elements and say that it's nothing but burning balls of gas.
Burning balls of gas billions of miles away.
Boom, but to you, everything's gas. But they also have deep significance, especially to our species, right? Like these stars really mean something. Yeah. And they're beautiful. And I have, through various experiences, this one being one of them, I have gained this new appreciation for a game that I already loved and for a music track that I already loved that makes it so much more meaningful to me and that really shows me the potential for music. Like we mentioned before with Chrono Trigger, it doesn't alleviate the suffering, but it does do something, and that something is so hard to put your finger on, but it's real. It's deeply real, and you can feel it. And Mario RPG has several tracks that, for me, they just ooze deep meaning for me, that in a way that maybe they don't for other people.
Sure.
But that they I don't know, they mean so much to me that I can't possibly. You know, no other game music has been able to give me an experience the way that this one has in multiple different ways, multiple different times, all throughout my life. But yeah, number one best game soundtrack ever, Mario RPG.
Well, you know,
that's it.
What I love about that pick is that game, and almost by extension, it's like the game is defined. For me, games like the ones we talk about are defined by their music. Their emotional resonance. Yeah. Comes or is the delivery method, the vehicle by which the emotion is delivered is the music, right? We talked about that a little bit earlier.
Yeah, that's true.
So this game resonated with you, and it represented connection, with your brothers, connection with others, and so in my life, that kind of connection, those like moments of like real, like sincere, earnest connection with other people, have been a little bit rare. Like, I spent a lot of my time alone. I was always kind of a loner in a certain sense. And, have kept my group of friends pretty small and have made sure that, like, only the type of people that I feel like I know I can trust are the ones I'll let in. I don't have, like, a billion friends that I know almost none of them really.
You're always checking up on them.
Yeah, that's just not the way I've lived. Yeah. And so, I've shared some experiences in other podcasts, so I'm not going to retread some stuff. But there have been moments in my life where I have sort of realized how alone I really am and how much like I will never be understood. Right. This is really referencing old stuff. So go watch old podcasts.
All of them.
The prism, and I call it prison of individual perspective. Not feeling like you really know or can feel what other people feel. Language is so inefficient at communicating that, right? Whereas music is much better. Like, I feel like as a method of like connecting people emotionally, like we can both feel something from this in a way that I can't explain it to you. And that's what happened for you as a child with your brothers, and that music coming through the TV screen as you're playing and enjoying this game together. And then it's almost like a exponential sort of experience as you can use that same thing that connected you then with this other person who really needed it.
Yeah.
And
who has trouble connecting with people.
Who has a disability that makes that even harder. And so talking to him would not have helped.
Right.
But that thing that gave you that genuine connection, that rare moment in life that we all, I think, kind of live for, like the thing that keeps us going is for those moments of human connection. You were able to share that or carry it and create that same kind of rare human bond with another person and all those ways you just said. And so I think that is possibly the greatest pick. That's like one of the best stories I've ever heard as far as like games having meaning and giving you real human connection in your life.
Yeah.
So everybody else is wrong. Whatever you've picked as your number one best soundtrack, it's not correct.
Can't wait to see everyone else's picks. All your wrong picks.
For my number one, I picked Suikoden 2.
Okay.
So the composer for Suikoden and Suikoden 2 is Miki Higashino, who I've just gone on and on about how Yasunori Mitsuda is my favorite game composer.
The best, yeah.
He's my favorite game composer.
Yes.
I'll use the word favorite because his music speaks to me in this very unique way and like emotionally connects with me. But Miki Higashino might be the best composer, technically. And it is a crying shame that she retired from the industry so long ago after Suikoden 2 and basically has not done any more music since then. Because she and like Yoko Shimomura are two of, when we just come to like the technical mastery and maybe like the classical training as far as like that influence on how amazing and complex and rich like the soundtrack can be. That's what Suikoden 2 is. Like, I was listening to just the intro for the title screen. It's just like you turn the game on, you don't press start, you just wait.
I know, it's beautiful. It's so good.
The way that
such a good
piece moves is just unbelievable. It goes so many places in such a short span of time. You got like this big choir and like kind of like big, like almost like danger war feel to it. And then it goes into this really sad, just like sentimental, moving, slow piece that goes right into almost a marching tune of hope and like sailing, that sort of like ascending feeling. And then it goes into this almost Hollywood-esque, just like bombastic fanfare finish to it that it's just like, what? You feel like you went on a journey in like 2 minutes through just this music that she wrote for this title screen. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
On top of course, the one we've talked about recently too, where after the opening sequence where the boys are caught up in the false flag operation and have to like jump off the cliff to hopefully survive and not be slaughtered.
Slash in the rock.
Yeah. You go through like their history in this sepia tone sequence that's like the opening titles credits, and it's just this piano piece that is just I again, it hits that note I'm talking about and that you've described beautifully of being like a dual feeling of like this deep sad regret and just like pain, but like this other sense that like there's hope, like it's going to be okay. It's easing you through that. It's like carrying you through that pain and you're going to get to somewhere better soon. She's also a master at creating that sort of tone, which is why I love her music. But there's also just so many characters in the game. There's 108 characters you can get.
Yeah, that's wild.
It's also another series, and many games were like this back then, that can move between being really fun and silly and then back into being really dramatic and dark and just like some awful, awful stuff happens. And then we're back over here having some fun again. And it's also another game that I feel like is strongly carried, and if carried is not a word that you like, then just like elevated by its musical score. You know, it's in a time where like translation was not and localization was not taken very seriously.
Yeah.
And so it's actual technical dialogue and word choice and writing can be really rough at times. But it doesn't matter, because the sentiment of what those characters feel and what they want you to feel is absolutely delivered tenfold by the music. So even if this is a perfect example where like what Tetsuya Takahashi was worried about for Xenogears, my story isn't working, it's not landing. The music came in. This is an even better example of that. Like without that music, I'm not sure that story would have worked as strongly as it does.
So is the music a huge factor in you favoring 2 over 1?
Well, I actually do favor 1 over 2.
Oh, okay, I see.
But
I thought you had it the opposite.
I think a strong reason for why 2 is as excellent as it is in large part due like to the musical score being as strong as it is. I honestly can't believe that she stopped writing music. It's a tragedy. Like, what is she doing? Come back.
Well, I mean, how old was she?
She was young. I mean, she wanted to go be a mother, and she wanted to go like kind of like settle down and like being in her life. And so she just, I'm going to go be a mother and spend time with my children, and I'm not going to be working on video games anymore.
Gosh, imagine having a mother that was that talented with music. Like that, those kids are spoiled, and they probably don't even know it. Is the real tragedy?
She was a talent, a very, very rare generational talent who just walked away and never came back. And I'm just
one day.
Why, man? Just please, just come back.
Let's start.
Your kids are older. They've probably graduated by now, right? Like, just come back.
Right.
You don't have to go back to Konami. Konami sucks. Go somewhere else. But like, do write some music again. We need you in this world.
Yeah. For real.
Anyway, that rounds out our top 10. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed that long episode.
Yeah.
But thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for supporting the channel. We'll see you guys again on Wednesday for the Metal Gear Solid 2 episode. Peace out till then.